Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. We'll be going over Leetcode problem number 1179, which is the Reformat department table problem. This is a database problem that we'll be solving in MySQL. So we'll see in the schema that we're given a department table, and in that table there are the column names ID, revenue, and month. And then we scroll down to the problem and we'll do write an SQL query to reformat the table such that there is a department ID column and a revenue column for each month. Return the result table in any order. So we'll scroll down here and we'll see that this is what the table looks like as we are given it. So we're just given a list of revenues with the IDs, and then also we're given a month column. But we also want, but what the problem is asking us to do is to kind of flip this so that the months each get their own column. And the way that we're going to have to do this is kind of tedious, just because we're going to have to spell out each new column that we're forming, since we're taking a 3-column table and making it a 13-column table. And that's just 13 columns because we have 1 column for ID and then 12 columns for a revenue column for each month. So how we're going to start this is just by doing select from, and then we're also going to have a group by here because we're going to group by IDs because we only want to return one ID for each month. So this would be, we're given 1, 2, and 3, and then we're returning nulls if there is no revenue there. So we only want to return each individual ID though, and then we also want to, if there are multiple revenues for a single ID, we would want to combine those into one ID. So we're going to do from and then group by. And we're going to group by ID in this case, and we can go ahead and put that in just because we know that the ID column is what we're grouping by. And how we know that is a department ID column and a revenue column for each month. So the department ID is given to us as the major thing we're returning. And we'll see how that goes later on. And then we can go ahead and fill in our from as well, because we're only given one table, so we can do from department. And then now we're going to be into our more tedious selecting each individual column. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have to specify the 13 different columns we're returning. And each one is going to be saying basically the same thing because we want the same kind of output for each one. So first we're going to want our ID to be returned. So we're going to do select ID, and we're going to do a comma, and then we're going to start with January. So we want to do select ID, and then we also want to select an if statement. And the reason we're going to use an if statement here is because we want these nulls here if there are no revenue. And without that if statement, it's not really going to be possible to put those nulls in as easily as we can just put it in with a single argument here. So we'll do if and then month equals Jan, because they're given to us in their 3-letter codes. First letter is capitalized. We're going to do revenue. And then the way this if statement is going to work is we return the revenue value if it's there, and if not, we're going to put null. And null in SQL is just all lowercase to get this keyword. So what we're going to do is if month equals January, we're going to return the revenue, and if there's no revenue there, we're going to return null. So here's a little depiction of how an if function works. We'll see that it takes 3 conditions. So we have the first one, which is the condition. So that's what we did with our first part. So if month equals January, that part is our condition. So if our condition is true, what we're going to do is return revenue. And then if the condition is false, we're going to return null. So if we have a revenue, we're returning revenue, and if we don't, we're going to return null. And that's just what we see here. There's no revenue for 3 for the month of January, so we returned a null there. So now, what we're going to do now is name this, and we're going to do as Jan revenue. And we're just following the cases that they provided to us in the return statement. So there's one more thing here that if we were to just run this would be kind of odd. So if there's multiple revenues for the same ID, this will not really satisfy that because you would try to put 2 values in the same place. So how we're going to do that is just do the sum of those. And this last sum argument is just going to, if there's multiple values there, we're going to just sum them and return that value instead of one or the other. And we're using the group by with the sum, so that way it will only do the sum of each ID, so that you won't have to worry about the sum of differing IDs being added together. This is only going to do the sum where it's a single ID. So now we have this, and now we're going to do this for each month, so we can get a return value for each month. And it's just going to be the same statement. So once you have logicked your way through the first one, it's much easier because it's just copying and pasting that, and we will get into that in a second. But all you're doing is just changing your value that is true, or your condition. You're changing your condition and then the name that you're returning. So once we have gone through and done each of those columns as our different revenues, really all that's left now is just to run the code, and what we'll see is that we do satisfy the test case. And this will work with all test cases, and it's a little tedious up front, but for any specific like company or something like that, writing these few lines of code will eventually make the table much more readable, and it will automate things going forward, because you'll only have to write those 12 lines of code once, and then each of those will have their revenue values inserted automatically. So this will work with all test cases, and I would like to thank you for watching my solution to Leetcode problem number 1179. If you found it helpful or enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment if you would have approached this problem in a different manner. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for stopping by.